On the 2nd of October was Mahatma Gandhiji's birthday, Gandhi Jayanti. And on Gandhi Jayanti, I was sharing one of my favorite teachings of Gandhiji, which is, what's the point of that fast speed, which has no direction? What's the point of going so fast if we have no direction? And that's exactly what's happening, as you've said, is we're moving so fast. But that speed itself is detrimental in many ways. And since we have no direction, we end up nowhere. I'm not sure that I would say that slow is always good and speed is always bad. I don't think that either of them is right or wrong inherently or intrinsically. I think that there's great value in both. The key, though, is that what makes slowness valuable. Otherwise, you'd say, well, what's the value in going slow? If I can do it fast, why do it slowly? The value in slowness is our ability to be aware. That proverbial slow down and smell the flowers. When we are moving fast, we tend to lose our anchoring in awareness. So we become mindless. We become unconscious. We end up inevitably saying and doing things that we later regret. That wasn't me. That's not what I meant. Those sorts of things almost always happen in times of stress because we're moving too quickly. We also end up losing that opportunity to really experience the depth and the joy of life if I'm not able to be aware. If I'm on autopilot, well, then I'm not really happy. Who's happy? Right? If I'm not even conscious in the moment, because I'm running on autopilot, because I'm running so fast that I can't be aware, juggling so many things that I'm nowhere, well, then I'm not able to really experience deep joy, deep peace, deep meaning, deep connection. So we need to be slow in order to become aware. But as our ability to be aware grows, it doesn't mean that we always need to be really slow. So for example, in meditation retreats, one of the practices is a walking meditation, where you literally, as the feet are on the ground, you really pay attention, so slow, such awareness, to the heel, and then the ball of the toe, and then the toes, and then the heel comes up, and the weight gently shifts, and then the other foot. And you're moving so slowly as your heel, and then the ball, and then the heel rises. Now, it's a beautiful practice. And it's a beautiful practice to bring awareness into walking. But ultimately, that doesn't mean that that's the best way to always walk. The practice is one that teaches us to be aware. But ideally, we should be able to bring that level of awareness into whatever speed we find ourselves moving. Similarly, you do, eating meditations or mindful eating, where you take a raisin a grape and you eat it over the period of 20 minutes, one raisin, one grape, and you really feel every bit of the juice, bit of the sugar, that as it touches the mouth and goes down, it's a great practice. Anybody who has mindless eating habits, anybody who's used to eating in front of the TV or their phones or social media or whatever they're doing, it's a great practice to learn how to slow down. It really brings awareness. But ultimately, I should be able to eat a full meal in half an hour, not just one raisin in half an hour, and still be aware. We shouldn't have to choose in our lives between awareness, joy, peace, and speed. So I think that slowness has incredible virtues and value. I think a lot of us are busy with no reason. We've gotten used to this just being busy, moving really fast because we're really busy even though we don't actually have anywhere to go. We're just busy and stressed and rushed out of habit. And slowness is a perfect antidote to that. Slow down. And there's moments in life, there's times in life, there's things we do where it's great to be able to do them at some sort of an efficient speed. If I'm at an airport and I've got to get onto my flight that's boarding, and it's at the last gate, me walking like this, like I would do in a meditation retreat, might make my walking even more mindful, but I'm going to miss my flight. So I need to be able to bring that level of mindfulness and awareness and connection into a life that also enables me to catch flights without having to show up at the airport the day before. And I think that's going to be really the key. Parenting, though, I would add a last point on parenting because it's something in and of itself. And you're absolutely right that in general we are over-parenting. And what do I mean by that? There's actually a lot of research around this, around children's ability to focus, to concentrate, to be happy. It used to be kids would go out and they would play. I mean, this is true even from when I was young. And it was certainly true from when my parents were young. But even when I was young, you'd go out, you'd play with your friends in the neighborhood. There were no mobile phones. There were no, things that could be stuck on you so your parents could, monitor where you were. You'd play in the neighborhood. You'd play in the street. You'd end up at somebody's house for lunch. You'd end up at somebody else's house for lemonade. You'd bike ride here. And you just had to be home for dinner. They didn't know where you were. Nobody was micromanaging. You were inventing your own games, inventing your own rules, role-playing, all sorts of things. This was pre-video games. It wasn't the Middle Ages. We had TV and stuff, but we didn't have video games yet. I remember when those came out. And so it was this opportunity for play that didn't have this external imposition. What has happened in recent years is, and some of it I think has to do with parents feeling guilty because they don't feel like they've got enough time with their kids. Parents are really busy. parents are really preoccupied. So when they are with the kids, they tend to be really kind of overbearing. And what we do then is we hyper play. So let's say that the child is sitting there and the child is very happy playing with, let's say, something like this. It's nothing. It's just the thing that covers my glass of water. But let's say a child came over and picked it up, and it's a frisbee. It's a UFO. It's a hat. It's, a whole world of games with this. As the child just begins to play, we, the parent, come in and we say, oh, look over here. Look what I've got for you. Come on, play with this toy. And then the child just starts with that. And we say, oh, look here. Look at this, the light. See, you push this. Look what happens. On, off, on, off. And we don't actually give the child time to actually be engaged with anything that they're doing for longer than a few minutes at a time. Because as parents, we're so hyper that we pass that on to the kid. We're constantly, if you watch parents with kids for a while, you'll see we're constantly pulling out of their hands what they're working on and trying to put something else into their hands that we think they'll have more fun with. We're constantly trying to keep them so entertained. Now, they don't look bored. They're happily playing with this thing. But we think, well, that can't possibly be interesting. My iPad is much more interesting. Look, 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 here's all your games. And then something else. And so what we end up with is kids who tragically, at the very time that their brains are developing, end up being developed, primed, parented, taught to be constantly switching back and forth. They never learn to actually intensely focus on anything. They never learn to self-generate play because we are constantly throwing games and things in front of them. Imagination and creativity are perhaps the two most important things of childhood. But now, with all of the technology and all of what we have and our own hyperness, we're not letting kids really be creative, really use their imagination. So we say, the child, oh, this is my hat. And we say, no, here's a hat. Oh, you want to buy a hat? Okay, let's go to Amazon and find you a hat. Well, the lesson was not about what a poor hat this is. The lesson was all about imagination and creativity and learning about their world. So slowing down for parenting is something I'm all in favor of. The idea that somehow we are the best parent based on how many hours of our child's day we fill with extracurricular activities. No one just plays in the neighborhood anymore because everybody's afternoons and evenings and weekends are so full of all of these activities, but these activities are all guided by adults. It's not kids getting together to play a game. It's adults as the coaches, the referees, the ones telling them what to do. The kids are just pawns in the adults' hands. So they're never getting that skill of their own creativity, their own imagination, learning to interact with the world in their own way, learning to interact with other kids in their own way. So I agree that it's very important to slow down in our parenting. Very important to allow children to just explore. stop trying to prevent them from being bored. Being bored is actually great because they will create something. Let them be bored for 5 minutes. They're not going to sit there and be bored for 2 hours. They will invent something. They'll create something. They'll start playing with something. It's what kids do. But we're so worried that we're being bad parents if our child isn't entertained for 30 seconds, that we don't even give them the spaciousness for their own creativity. So I think bringing an idea of slow parenting is beautiful. And the last piece I would add to that is get them in nature. Because nature in and of itself is very slow. Things happen slowly, flowers open slowly, trees grow slowly. Things in nature move slowly. Not, little animals on the way, but nature itself. And the grounding, the literal grounding impact on their nervous systems of being in dirt, in sand, in water, in trees, in the sun, is probably the very best thing you can do for them.